If it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. These last few weeks, I've had a return trip to the wilderness. And in the wilderness, you either get bitter or you get better. For me, for this trip, it consisted of 3 consecutive major disappointments. The first one, God had been leading our team in a direction. It seemed so clear and it had momentum and we were moving in the right direction until we weren't. There was a significant right turn that I didn't see coming and it just rattled me. The things that I thought were in place were no longer in place. And I was like, God, what are you doing? Did I miss some cues along the way? I was so sure of so many things, and now I'm not. The second, we had been working on a major project also through J17, and I was very, very pleased with the results. That was like the next day. And so it was designed for significant engagement, and that's not what happened. I'm still pleased with what we did, but the fruit of it wasn't, at least initially, what I expected. And then the third was a realization that if it was easy, Jesus wouldn't have prayed for it. Sounds like the title of a good book. I've known for a while that there's a reason Jesus went to his knees over this whole idea of unity. But I was in a situation where there were believers on 2 opposite sides that both had some biblical principles that they were correctly exercising, and yet in total opposite directions. There's no way that I'm going to solve that. That is going to take divine intervention. Now, it's worth noting that Jesus prayed for unity, not uniformity. Differences don't have to divide us. So that wasn't the issue. The issue was that these 2 sides saw the other side as the enemy, the one who must be defeated. And there's not going to be a lot of unity until that position softens. Is life natural or spiritual? Yes. Welcome to the both and life, where it'll work out better if we pay attention to both. There's an Old Testament story called Job, where Job's suffering is remarkable. You get about 40 chapters of it. And his 3 friends, if you can call them that, when everything went wrong, showed up, and it literally says that for the first week, they did it exactly right. They were just silent. They grieved with Job. But when they couldn't take the discomfort of the suffering any longer, they started looking for solutions. And so they blamed Job. Job, meanwhile, blamed God. And what none of them realized is what we, the readers, get to realize in the first couple chapters of that book, that there were some things going on in the heavenlies. Satan was involved, and it actually was mostly his fault, all that had taken place. There's our part, there's God's part, and there's Satan's part. And we need to pay attention to all 3. It's rarely an either or. My time in the wilderness revealed 3 significant questions corresponding to those 3 parts. And I'll share them in the order that they happened. These questions can guide us through our wilderness times of testing, where things are painful and uncomfortable and we're not sure what's happening. For me, it took several days of suffering before I realized I needed to ask any of these questions. But the first that actually started to shed some light on what was going on was Satan's part. And I realized that over the top of my disappointment, there was also an enemy who was trying to steal, kill, and destroy my mental health. God healed me from depression a couple years ago, And I'm going to tell that story in the next episode. But Satan was trying to drag me back into the pit of depression. And I hadn't realized that that's what was going on. Once I did realize it, well, when you realize that you're in a spiritual battle, then you need spiritual weapons. And so the moment that I started employing some of those spiritual weapons, things got a little bit better. It was still a battle, and the battle was still intense, but at least I knew the victor. Is life spiritual or physical? Well, it's both. And we actually have some physical understanding because of recent scientific developments that can help to understand what's going on in the brain when brain chemistry gets off. We all have neural pathways that help the brain to know how to respond in certain situations. And because the depression neural pathways had been broken, I typically was not responding in a depressive way. But the neural pathways aren't completely destroyed. It's kind of like an old crumbling road where some of those parts are still there. And Satan was trying to rebuild that road. And Satan is always going to attack in the areas where we're most vulnerable. And so for me, in this situation where I was dealing with disappointment, that was my vulnerability. And that's where he attacked. The next question that helped was for God to actually give some answers to the question, God, what are you doing? That's the part that had initially been so troubling because I just couldn't make sense of it. And I still don't have complete answers to some of those questions. But God did tell me pretty clearly a big piece of what this wilderness time was about. Over the top of a bed of grace, a thick bed of grace, God was saying to me, I need to toughen you up. In times of questioning and difficulty and uncertainty, I need to help you get to a place where you trust and where you're dependent and where you're actually even thankful. And I need to help you get there quicker because those times are going to keep coming. In fact, they're going to get harder. And so I need to help you get to a place of trust faster. And again, it was very helpful to have an idea of what God was doing and how I could actively and proactively align with him in his work. God and the devil are a both and. Both are active forces operating in opposite directions. Now, they're not equal forces by any stretch. God is the creator of all. Satan is not. At the end of the story, we know who wins. Satan is a defeated foe. And yet, he's still stronger than we are. And so if we go into battle without any weapons, spiritual weapons, then we're going to get hurt. Both are probably operating, especially in times of trial. The third question, and it was actually for me the last one that I spent any time thinking about, was what's going on in me? And when, through my wife's help, I realized that part of this was just simply grieving, and that part of my fatigue and weariness could just be explained physically. It wasn't all because Satan was trying to drag me back into the pit of depression. Well, that helped me give myself a little bit more grace. All three of those combined helped me make it through the wilderness and come out stronger on the other side. There's still a battle, but that wilderness trip, I believe, is largely complete. There's our part, there's God's part, and often Satan has a part. It can help in times of trial to ask what's going on in all three of those realms. God's the author of our stories. And anybody who reads fiction knows that the best stories are filled with tension. In fact, as a reader, you just keep turning the pages because the tension becomes unbearable if it's a really good story. Well, life is kind of like that. It's just that when we're in the middle of the story, the tension is indeed unbearable. We're not just a neutral party watching it, we're feeling it. And I'm sure many of you are going through those kind of situations right now. I want to encourage you that God is the author of the story. And even what Satan imposes for evil purposes, God can superimpose for better purposes. The outcome of the story is not in question. And because of the cross and an empty tomb, we know that God is good. He's on our side. And he has an end to the story that's worth pursuing all the way to the end. We can trust him. We can grow independence, and life will get better when we do. God will reveal the right answers at the right time, and that will help us through the wilderness. Thank you for watching. I'd like to invite you to subscribe, to comment, to give some feedback, to let some other people know about this channel. We're hearing great things, but love for more people to be able to experience it. Next week, I'll share that story of overcoming depression, because that is a both and story also. And when we forget that, we can stay stuck longer than we need to. Thanks again for watching.